Thanks for joining me. We're going to discuss how to change our percents to decimals and to fractions. So we're going to talk about changing from one form to the other because you can write a percentage as a decimal and you can write either of those as a fraction. They mean the same thing, they just look different. So first of all, percent. Percent means per 100. If you think about cent, right? Cent, 1 cent is a penny, which is 100 pennies make a dollar. So it means per 100. An easy way to change a percent to a decimal is to simply divide. So if you're not sure what to do, percent means per 100. That just means divide by 100. So to make 25% a decimal, you take the percent, so 25 divided by 100, and you get 0.25. The other way you can do this is in a percent wherever the decimal is. So in this case, there's not one written, so that's at the end of the number, so behind the 5. If you move the decimal over 2 times to the left, that changes a percent to a decimal, so 0.25. When you're starting with a percent and you want to make a fraction, since it means per 100, you just write the number over 100. So 25 over 100 would be the fraction. And then you reduce that. So both of these are divisible by 25. So you would get 1/4. All right, so we can look at the next row. The next row we have the fraction and we want to change that into decimal form and percent form. If you're starting with a fraction, it's very easy to change it to decimal form. You simply divide. 3 divided by 8. A fraction, bar, just means division. So 3 divided by 8 is 0.375. And to change from a decimal to a percent, decimal times 100. So that's going to give you 0.375 times 100, and you would get 37.5%. The other way you can think about this is if you're multiplying by 100, it's the same as moving the decimal place 2 times to the right. So that's where you get the 37.5. Okay, so if you're starting with the decimal form, we just talked about changing from decimal form to percent. So 0.3 times 100 would be 30. So it would be 30%. And you can change the percent to a fraction, or if you want to change the decimal to a fraction, you can do that as well. Remember your place values. So the 1 is in the tenths place. That means it would be over 10. The 2 is in the hundredths place. Whoops. And so if you wanted to change that to a fraction, you would just put it over 100. The 3 is in the thousandths place, and so forth. So since we have one digit after the decimal, it's in the tenths place. So to make that into a fraction, you would simply put it over 10. So 3 over 10 would be your fraction. Okay, so now we're starting in the 4th row. We have 1.5%. So to change that to a decimal, you simply divide by 100. So 1.5, so it's percent divided by 100. So that's 1.5 divided by 100. And when you do that, you'll see that you get 0.015. As a fraction, it's going to be, you can either put 1.5 over 100, and then you have to deal with the fraction, with the decimal within the fraction. It might be easier to use the decimal version. So the decimal version, we have tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So since the 5 is in the thousandths place, we're going to put that number over 1,000. So 15 over 1,000. And then we just reduce our fraction. So 15 is divisible by 5, and so is 1,000. So if I divide by 5, I get 3 over 200, and that won't reduce anymore. So that's going to be my fraction in lowest terms. Okay, the next row I have 0.98. So that decimal, if I want to change it to a percent, I'm simply going to multiply by 100, and I will get 98. So 98%. And then you can put the percent over 100. So 98 over 100. Those are both even, so I could divide them both by 2. That would give me 49 over 50, and that's as good as it gets. That's in lowest terms. Our final row, we have a fraction. So to find the decimal, we simply divide. So 4 divided by 3, it's going to be 1.33, and it's actually 3 repeating. So if you wanted to put the bar over it, you could. That just means that that number continues to repeat. Or you can just round to the nearest hundredth, we'll say. That will be fine. And then if we want to write it as percent, we're going to multiply by 100. So we will get 133.3%.